Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone tuning in for this full supermoon in Taurus video, cosmic wisdom video. I've just emerged from a 10-day silent meditation course. So I'm just slowly easing myself back into communication, which is perfect actually, because Taurus is the sign of going slow and steady. And as it is an earth sign, it is more about the felt experience in the body, the connection to inner states, feelings, sensations, knowings, groundedness, as opposed to the kind of more etheric or the more airy or even more emotional realms. And so by maybe just starting this video by taking a few breaths, slowing down your body. Often when we pop on to learn something, we might have like pen in hand, ready to take notes. Maybe we've already been consuming a lot. We have a lot going on like mentally and outside of us. And during any full moon or lunar contemplation, because the lunar represents the inner experience, we really want to let go of the kind of mental cerebral and tune into the inner experience. And especially during a earth full moon, it's even more so about really going into the body and the felt experience and grounding anything that you might bring in or hear that resonates in through the body, as opposed to kind of like capturing it mentally and then trying to logically make sense of it. So I'll just invite everyone to maybe, wherever you're at, hit pause and take a few seconds or minutes or however long you need, or maybe right now isn't the time to listen because you are, having a hectic day or something, to come back to this, or to just take your breaths and set the intention to tune back in from a place of really like being and trusting that your body will receive the wisdom that it needs through this kind of transmission, and trusting that without letting the mind have to interfere too much. That's a really good place to start for this Taurus full moon. So the day when I'm recording this is November 4th, but the full moon is officially on November 5th at 5:19 a.m. So if you are generating a transit chart so that you can then go and see what areas of your life this full moon is falling in specifically, then again, you might want to pause the video and come back and see what house this full moon is in. So you would want to look at the chart and find this glyph here, which is the moon, and it's in Taurus, as you can see. Find that, this degree point here, this one, 13 degrees of Taurus in your chart, and then you would cross-reference that to a chart like this that shows you what house or what area of your life this full moon specifically is affecting. Okay. So that's a good thing to do also before we get started, or you can just kind of listen to the downloads and go and do that work afterwards. So as I mentioned, the full moon is taking place tomorrow, November 5th at 5:19 a.m. And it is a super full moon. A super full moon means that it's closer, very close to the earth. It's the third super full moon in a row. And super full moons, as they're closer to the earth, you can imagine what a super full moon, or what a full moon in general, does to the tides, right? It has that pull on the tides, the waters of the body of earth, and obviously the waters inside of us, as the moon is, the celestial body that works on our inner waters, which is our emotional experience, the inner densities, okay, within us. So a super full moon being closer would have a a stronger pull on the tides, thus it has a stronger pull on our inner tides. So it's going to be a big emotional or felt full moon. And it's the third in a row. So we've had 3 super full moons. So, that in itself, we can infer that, okay, it's been 3 months now, which is a whole season of really feeling these full moons pull on us, and just knowing when a full moon is happening and following these cycles is a really great first step to becoming the master of your life experience, right? That's why we do cosmic wisdom. That's why we follow astrology and the movements of the planets, is because by understanding the as without, right? What is happening in the cyclical nature of the planets or nature outside of us, we have a direct mirror to what we can expect to also happen within. Everything that happens in nature, our body is a mirror to that. And so when you are aware, okay, things might already be popping up in the nature of this full moon. I know for me, they certainly are. But because you know that it's a full moon, that's the first step, is breathing into, okay, this is to be expected, right? And then once you understand the nature of the archetype, the lunar archetype, the area of your life that this full moon is working on, then you can pinpoint, okay, and this is happening for my liberation. It's happening in this area. And then you might even trace the cycles each year. What happens around this time every year for you? And how can you, again, just move into a slightly higher octave through, you know, realizing and accepting and seeing the cycles, deepening your awareness, your personal awareness, and then accessing the wisdom from those first 2 put together, and use that to navigate how to navigate this full moon. So the first thing we want to tune into when we think about work with any lunar cycle is not just where's the moon, but where is the sun, right? So if this is Earth, it's not a flat Earth. It just looks that way based on how I drew it. Okay. We always forget, or, we never talk about the fact that we're learning astrology, or we're taking in astrology from the perspective of Earth, right? It's only one of the planets that we don't talk about when we do astrology, and that's because we are of the Earth. We are experiencing the cosmic forces exactly as the Earth experiences the cosmic forces and cycles. That's why I will always say, the best way that you can tune into astrology or these seasonal cycles and see, okay, what wants to shift into me, is to look at the window, at the tree right outside of you, or what's happening in nature. This full moon, for example, is called the Beaver full moon. Why? Because at this time of year, beavers are finalizing their dam for the winter, right? They're making all of the final fortifications to their physical structure, their secure base that is going to keep them safe, protected, and warm throughout this wintering season. Okay, so that's something that you can infer from nature. All right, I'm going to then look at my foundation, my base, my core values, right? Like, this isn't a time when in the summer the beaver can afford to dismantle the dam, rebuild, and have things a little bit unstructured and messy for a while, because if it doesn't have somewhere safe to go home to at night, it's not going to freeze to death, right? Likewise, we can all afford to be a little bit more energetic output, a little bit more kind of like messiness and busyness in life in the summer. But in the winter, we're really called into this kind of rehoming and looking around you and internally and seeing, okay, what is my internal space asking of me? And just like the beaver that's fortifying its dam with everything that it needs in a super solid way and nothing more, really. we want to really dial into our core values during this Taurus full moon. Okay. So as the moon illuminates the inner experience, when the video's done or when you have time, you're going to take some time to go inward, close your eyes, contemplate and feel into your life and think into, okay, what are my core values and how far away have I gotten from those, or where have they not fully kind of come into fruition in a way that I want or feel like I need for my life to expand in the ways that I'm hoping, and really get very clear on those. Okay. That's a big thing that this full moon is going to illuminate and ask us to take a look at. And as the full moon is also asking you to release and let go, then you might also want to look around and see, okay, what is something that isn't aligned with my core values? That in terms of like who I've become this year, right? Because when we're working with the moon, we're working with a 13-month cycle. We're working with, we had this full moon at this time last year, and we'll have it again at this time next year. And so you really want to take stock into like what has changed for me since this time last year, where what have I changed? Who have I become? How have I grown? And what isn't in alignment with that, that's maybe still hanging around or still part of my inner patterning. Okay. So the first step would be reevaluating or doing kind of a full sweep of your core values. And this especially has to do with, when I talk about Taurus, I always start with self-love. Really, Taurus is the main sign of receivership. It's actually the only sign in the zodiac that's like a pure receiver. A lot of signs are householders or givers or service to spirit, but Taurus is the sign that is really good at receiving. And when this archetype is developed in us in our early conditioning, we look at the period of time in our life from about 2.5 years to like 5-ish years old. And you could even think about your home. You could think about, how your parents were resourcing you. And by that, I mean, or your support system, how, not did you have a home, like a basic need would be shelter, but how comfortable and resourced was your home? That's going to be a reflection of your own self-love and self-worth and your ability to receive. If you had parents, for example, that were going to work every day and working hard and bringing those resources that they earned back and putting them into the house into comfy bed sheets and organic food and, all of those nice things, then chances are you are strong in this Taurus energy. If on the flip side you had parents or caregivers that were going out and resourcing themselves, and for example, spending those resources outside of the home and saying, well, you don't need the sports, you don't need the extracurriculars because this money instead I would prefer to spend on at the bar or gambling, that would be something where you might have a harder time with this Taurus energy, because these are the years when we learn, are we worthy of receiving? And of course, we're all worthy of receiving, but it is the case that we come in and we get conditioned, into maybe a lack of that truth, right? And depending on where this moon is hitting your personal chart, you might have a lack, or you might have your Mars placement or a more difficult placement there, meaning this moon's going to bring up some bigger life patterns for you. So you might want to think back to what was life like during those years. Did anything really big happen during those years, and am I still playing out some of those patterns? I could give you a good hint into what might be coming up around this full moon season. But again, the core values we want to zone into revolve around self-love. So as I just mentioned, our ability to receive is directly reflective of our self-love and self-worth. Okay. And then from that foundation is what the foundation of self-love and self-worth, that solid foundation, that secure base, right? Of I'm worthy of receiving love is what we end up in life building our structures on. This is a house. Yes. Okay. So your external, like material slash abundance has a lot to do with this Taurus energy because the Taurus archetype in you represents your secure base to your own ability to feel worthy, confident, and receive secure love. For example, if you have Chiron in Taurus, which a lot of people do because it's a generational planet that was transiting, I think it was like in the 70s and early 80s, that is a wound to your self-worth, to your self-value. And these people can actually have, this can manifest in its most extreme as like suicidal ideation or tendencies, or heaven forbid, um, you know, actions because their self-worth is so damaged that they don't even feel worthy of existing on this physical planet, Earth, right? So again, those that are strong in Taurus energy are often able to really, like build their abundance on a solid foundation because they're like, why shouldn't I have that? Of course, I'm worthy of receiving that, right? And those that have a lack in this energy are often, kind of building straw houses for themselves, so to speak, because that foundation is a little bit cracked and kind of rocky or shaky. So they might not feel like they're worthy of the most abundant life. So, what we're able to manifest in life directly relates to this Taurus energy because Taurus is such a big indicator of our self-love, self-worth. So everything builds up to then. Okay. So a little download there to help you feel into this Taurus energy. And I'll go back to my drawing here that I greatly diverged from. Okay. So let me start over. This is you standing on the planet Earth. Earth, you. Okay. And you're facing this way. Now, what we always want to do when we work with the movements of the planets is with the moon, is we also want to work with the sun, right? Because the moon isn't an illuminary of its own light. It reflects the light of the sun. So the lunar experience is always a refracted experience of the solar experience. Let me explain. There's 12 different, right? So these would be all the constellations all the way around the Earth. And obviously, if you go outside and you look up, you're going to see the constellations and the stars. And at this time of year, this is Scorpio constellation, which is the scorpion, which I'm not even going to attempt to draw, right? And that's where the sun is transiting at this time of year. Okay, so 2 weeks ago, we had a new moon in Scorpio, which is where the moon is at the same place in the sky that the sun is at. And then because the moon rotates all the way around every 28 days, then, next month in 28 days, it will be here and we'll get another new moon. But we're working on a 2-week cycle. So the moon in 2 weeks since we've had this new moon has rotated here to opposite the sun, okay? So when we get a full moon, it's always going to be opposite where the sun is. So you can picture yourself standing on the earth, looking at the sun. You're basically looking at a sun that's transiting through the Scorpio constellation. And what does the sun do for us, right? It's the solar logo or consciousness of our solar system, which means that it lights up the information that's available to us, right? Knowledge is directly brought from light. Picture, you're trying to read a book and it's completely dark in the room. There's no access to knowledge because it's completely dark. The thing that's outside of you that you're trying to see is dark. So you shine a flashlight on it, and now you can access knowledge from that external thing, aspect to you, right? So the sun lights up everything in this world that we have access to, you know, like downloading or gathering its knowledge. And when we bring it into us, that's when we turn it into wisdom, and we can use that wisdom to then interact with that external reality in a way that is aligned for us, right? So the light equals the knowledge and our like external reality. So what's happening out there, okay? And then what we have is this kind of like outward looking or feeling towards the sun at this time. So we're going to have some scorpionic type themes happening because it's Scorpio season. But then what you have here is these energies from the full moon kind of pulling at you from behind. Okay. So it's like basically saying, what everything that you're witnessing outside of you in the light, right? There's the opposite of that kind of pulling at you on the inside, creating this inner tension, because this is an opposition, right? In astrology, we call this an opposition, when the sun's consciousness is opposite the moon's reflection. So we have these two forces. One force is pulling us in this direction, one force is pulling us in this other direction. And the space between that is tension and inner conflict. And, just like that's where we get the waters, the tides, the waves, the lunar, the full moon experience of like inside things bubbling up because of this tension that's created in the nature of that full moon. Okay. So we want to work with both of these aspects to really go deep into the inner experience, the inner full moon experience. Okay. So first we'll look at Scorpio season. And if you've watched the previous Cosmic Wisdom video, or if you've downloaded the Harvest to Solstice workbook from my website, I talk a lot about how important this time of year is, because we're on the kind of descent and wrapping up the solar year. The sun is closing out from now until winter solstice around December, I think it's December 21st this year, where it seems to, die or go still in the sky for 3 days when it's at its solar minimum, and then becomes reborn. And at that point starts to grow and grow and grow. So the days get longer towards summer solstice. And again, we start that descent. So we're right in this chunk of time of Scorpio season where we've come out of the harvest in Virgo, which shows us, okay, back in the spring or last winter, you went inward, you were in your womb, you were in your creativity, you were in your trust state, wintering state, recuperating your energy. so that you could burst out in the spring with new growth that you wanted to materialize and, evolve this year. And so everything that you planned to kind of create and grow over last winter, in the spring, you started putting energy into, and then from spring to fall, Virgo season, harvest season, you were nourishing that, feeding that. What were the, ingredients that you gave to the creations of your life this year? And in the fall, we see what the gift of our labor is. We get that cornucopia, that fall harvest table, right? And now we're getting to a point where we're having to reduce, and let go of everything that isn't in alignment with what we want, where we want to be planting next season, basically, right? It's just like that beaver dam. When the beavers come to hibernate for the winter, they don't want a lot of, there's no point in having food storage in there, the types of food that's going to go bad. They don't want a lot of extra space, because extra space collects cold air and doesn't make it nice and tight and cozy. So they're really wanting to close in and close down and really get to those core values and focus on them and preserve them, so that by next spring, those are the bulbs of growth that you're able to replant and multiply. All of this to say that just like the trees need to drop her leaves now so that she can really fortify herself and keep those minerals and nourishing ingredients. What am I trying to say? Like, what feeds the leaves? Anyways, you guys get the point. In kind of more inward, so that she can weather the winter. We're also needing to look at our life and drop those things in Scorpio season as we go down to winter solstice that are no longer in alignment. And what this full moon is going to do for you, this is kind of the point of the video, is it's going to show you what wants to be released now. Okay? And that's the beauty of this full moon in Taurus. So people that are strong Taurus energy from like other lives, right? Say if you were a past life full-fledged Taurus and you come into this life carrying all of the baggage and stuff from your last life, because you love that comfort. You want that extra kind of buffer and comfort and security of having your things, right? Tauruses, they have beautiful homes with, things and comfort and the coziest, and it just has such a stable, grounded energy to it. Something I always think of when I do a Taurus full moon kind of download is that movie, The Darjeeling Limited. If you've seen it, if not, watch it. It's one of my favorite movies, but it's this family of brothers that go to India to kind of do this pilgrimage after their father's death. And they've come from a somewhat wealthy family that has started to lose their inheritance over the generations. But what they all have is this really high-end bougie luggage set. And it's like this heavy old school luggage set that they're carting all over India with them. And it's kind of ridiculous because they're on trains and in little, like on little mopeds and bikes and just going all over the country, but they're carrying these huge suitcases just because it's kind of a status symbol, just because it's a comfort. It's got their nice suits in it or whatever. And a certain part in the movie, they have to run to catch this train, and they kind of need to make this decision between like, they're running, trying to carry all of these bags, and they're not going to make it. And so there's this beautiful scene where they're running and they just start dropping the bags, and then they can really take off and they can jump onto the train. And this is exactly what we're feeling into at this time of life, right? And anything in the past that you have held on to out of a sense of security, right? Or maybe you've been trying to create a sense of security in your life, but you haven't quite known how because you're not strong in Taurus or Earth energy, and you've made some decisions that weren't in line with your core values. That's what's going to be illuminated this year for you to drop and let go of, and have that like inner trust and kind of gumption to leave behind, so you can kind of take off sprinting into this portal that we're going into, which is really getting comfortable with the shedding of our identity. Really, that's what it is. I mean, we talk about outside things, right? But it really is shedding layers of our identity that don't want to continue forward. So that's the soul or the higher self path saying, as we move through life on this spiral of evolution, we're constantly shedding and leaving behind the old identity, the human persona that was reared in fear, lack, these lower, kind of more dense, conditioned experiences, because we don't need to take that with us where we're going, right? An example, a personal example. I have always been, I'm very strong in Scorpio energy. Okay. So I have my South Node, which is like my past life mastery, and Pluto conjunct in the eighth house of Scorpio, and Pluto's in Scorpio. So um, my tendency would actually be the opposite of Taurus. It would be to kind of move on very quickly, take a lot of risks in life, not be afraid of throwing the bags out, off the first train in the movie and just saying, whatever, like I can start over again. I can always start over. And that's a really beneficial energy. If you have it, again, it all depends on how our soul is aligning us in this life, what our blueprint points out for us. So if you're a Scorpio rising, then you're really here to get comfortable with that constant cycle of like shedding. For me, because it's regressive, constantly shedding at a certain point in my life isn't aligned anymore. And so a practical example of this, and this is where you can take these kind of abstract, nebulous concepts I'm talking about, and then look at your life and see, okay, what's a practical example I can zero in of? So for me, my car, my vehicle. I've always had a car probably for just a year or two. And then I felt this feeling of, okay, I'm ready for a new car. Like that's old energy now. I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to get a new one. And so I'm always getting into a new, because it has that energy, that fire, that spark for me that I'm used to, right? The shedding of the old identity and coming into the new vehicle. And I now have my car, Claudia, who I've had for about 3 or 4 years, three years, I believe, and it's the longest I've had a car before. And I've started to feel the old feelings, the old pathways of, okay, well, yep, it's been a couple of years. I'm bored. I'm ready for a new car, but I love my car so much. And I'm really moving towards Taurus energy because for me, it's productive. And like, no, even though she's old, even though she's got some strange sounds starting, I'm going to decide to commit to this car. One of my values have deepened into maintenance over replacement. And that is a theme in my life. So again, you can look at the things in your life, right? The external reality. So in this sense, the external reality is Scorpio, which is death and transformation. Okay. The season of death and transformation in the sun. So you might say, oh, okay, so something might like hit the dust this month. Well, sure enough, my car, which is an aspect of my external reality, is now dying. Poor Claudia, her transmission is going. She's old. She has some other problems, and it just isn't. It would be a sunken cost to fix it. And isn't that interesting? It's right when I've decided to really focus on maintaining and sticking it out for the long haul and putting the work in. That's Taurus energy, right? It's commitment. It's reliability. It's long term. Um, Someone who is a strong Taurus would just buy a car and keep it for the rest of its life, like one owner, right? And so just when I've taken a movement into this, my actual car dies. And then this is where, again, the awareness is so key of this season of, okay, so I drive home from my appointment yesterday. I go into the dealership because every light has gone off. And he says, yeah, this car is pretty much like not worth fixing. And instead of going, well, right, and starting to feel that full moon experience of, guess what? Taurus has everything to do with financial abundance. A full moon is I could have, or the old me would have been like, oh, I can't afford it, and what am I gonna do? And oh my God, blah, 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 blah. Just creating all of the drama and all of the stress. I know everything happens for my liberation, and I take a moment to breathe into, okay, isn't that interesting? Just as I've decided to keep her, she is now dying. But instead of going down the death spiral, right? And going into that full moon, that lower octave of those full moon feelings and emotions that could be pulling on me and really create a lot of fear financially, I decide to breathe and say, okay, well, I trust that this is happening to get me into an even better car, an even more aligned situation, right? So this is where the awareness, so knowing the cycles, and of course I know, well, this is right on time, isn't it? Because I know we're in Scorpio season. I know that in my life, going into winter solstice, things are going to be going and leaving that aren't aligned with who I am anymore. So I can expect things to pop up that ask me to let go. And yeah, they might pop up outside me, but mostly, always, not mostly, always, mostly, and they're always going to be directly reflective of my inner experience. So this is a test. It's, are you the Alisha from 10 years ago who would have went into the old stories and the old pathways? Or are you the Alisha now that is doing this conscious work to align to always that next octave, to know who I am, know my growth points, know my old patterns, and when that slip is available, stay here, breathe, hold this place and go, I know what's happening external to me, right? I have the knowledge and the awareness. I also am self-aware in my inner reality, who I am. And then I'm going to use those two and focus on the wisdom here that, there's trust that this is taking me to my higher octave. So this is a great practical example of how things might pop up during the Scorpio season. And mine's a really literal example because in my chart, it's in the second house and eighth house, which is, right? So this is where you would go over, if I can just find where I have so if I go over, my full moon is happening here, and it literally has to do with money, right? Like daily routine, material possessions, priorities, job, like it affects all of those things, right? And then the eighth house has to do with shared financing, loans, assets, properties, resources. So this is a very literal full moon experience where something that is, an asset, a depreciating asset, part of my property, something that's a resource that I own is kind of biting the dust. And it's going to, because the full moon, so the sun for me is here, the full moon is over here, it's going to bring up feelings in this area of my life, right? So this is where you yourself can also look at, okay, where is my full moon happening? It might be happening in relationships. So the sun is over here, and I'm really feeling into, how how I want to move forward in life, in the world, in a way that like focuses on me, putting myself first, and who am I in my truest, most authentic self, and planting the seeds or seeing where I've grown in this past year in terms of really like expressing my true authenticity without fear, without dimming my light. That's the theme of the season for you. But then the full moon would be happening over here in the seventh house. And when when something happens over here to kind of bring this into question, right? Or like, something, you know what I'm trying to say, then it's your seventh house directly where the fallout is going to be. Maybe I'm not feeling worthy of this relationship. Oh no, that just happened. And it kind of feels like three steps back from what I've been doing. And is this person still going to love me, or am I still a worthy partner? Right. So you're going to feel the direct fallout in the opposite area of the chart. And now that you have awareness, remember that these any feelings, emotions that come up at this time are meant to pull you into the inner emotional experience. So, how do you know what's happening? Your mind is ruminating, you're thinking, you're going over made up scenarios, you're going over your reaction to a situation or what you said, or you're making up new fake scenarios. Like you're basically mentally tormenting yourself. And internally, your body's reacting. So you feel tense, you feel uncomfortable, you feel sick, you feel anxious. Once you understand that this is happening, you go, okay, it's a super full moon, the third of the last three super full moons. Like it's been such a crazy season. And what's the best thing you can do is just let go for a second and try to just meditate, shut off, have a bath, read a book to get your mind onto something completely different. That might be hard if you have a lot of anxiety coming up. Call a friend, talk, get those feelings out, knowing I know this isn't real. I know this isn't like my mind's just making stuff up, but can I just vent to you? Can I just get this out of my body, move energy, right? Like whatever you need to do to first bring your nervous system into a somewhat state of balance. And then you have to retrain your mind. Like there's no way around, this is the work, right? Like just by watching these videos and having awareness of what's going on, knowing the cycles and becoming aware of them, the next step is the inner awareness. And that's the work. It's the process of looking at yourself and saying, hey, how am I really doing? And what still needs to change? And the only way to change is to go inward. And that's what the moon is doing by, this is why we still need the moon, is because we're not just at a place where we're doing this work organically by ourselves every morning, waking up, meditating on love and compassion and able to hold that all day, every day, in all of our actions, external and internal. So the moon is still in place here to pull on us to create that inner discomfort. Well, what's the point of inner discomfort? It's to pull you inward. Okay. So when the emotions come up, when the body sensations happen, when you feel overwhelmed, when something happens external to you, that's your first clue during a full moon is to stop, shut down, go inward, and just feel into those sensations. And that's where the wisdom appears, right? That's where the wisdom comes up of, oh, okay, I've seen this before. I've been here before, right? How can I do it differently this time? Okay. That was a lot. Let me just take a moment here to see what else I want to talk about. Hmm. So, some other things that are happening here in the sky while we have this full moon happening, okay? Um, this this comes up right away. Okay, so we have Mars and Mercury conjunct, so close together in the sign of Sagittarius. This is an energy of like self-assertion and following your arrow and being direct and speaking your truth. Okay, so if you have moments or opportunities around that kind of energy or in a certain situation to clearly communicate, right? We talked a lot about like your authenticity, and this Scorpio sun season does a lot to pull us into who we are on a deeper level, right? It's deepening into our own psyche. And that might want to come out as a strongly spoken truth or certain conversations, certain maybe being a bit more direct than you usually are. Of course, always in a loving way, but because Mars is here, Mars is also the planet of kind of war and willpower, but it's at a very gentle degree. It's just at the very beginning of Sagittarius, and so you might it's giving that extra little bit of fire to kind of push you to express yourself in areas where previously maybe you might not have, because the sun in Scorpio is a fixed emotional sign, so tendency to like keep that balled up inside. So finding a bit of a little bit more fire to speak to your authenticity and your self-assuredness, that might be a theme around this time. Also, Venus is in Libra at this time, and it's directly opposing Chiron in Aries. Okay. So Venus in Libra is saying there's opportunity here for relationships to really get, there's going to be a focus on relationships and creating more harmony in relationships, because Venus always wants to create more harmony, more fairness, more peace. But it's in opposition to Chiron, which means, you're going to be dealing with those old relationships or old inner parts of you that haven't been comfortable showing up in a certain way, speaking your truth, putting yourself first. We've been working on this Chiron energy for so long, in the sense of like really coming into our authenticity and allowing ourselves a bit of selfishness to put ourselves first. So you can expect relationships to be a big theme at the time of this full moon as well. And remember, the full moon is in Taurus, which is our self-worth. So then you have this energy of the moon in Taurus saying, do you love yourself enough to keep putting yourself first so that your relationships can actually move into a higher accord? That's hard, right? But this is going to be something that will come up. And again, because it's the Scorpio and the shedding of the leaves and the releasing old patterns, also maybe releasing old relationships. It might be the case where, well, it's not really in your best interest, or it's not really aligned for this relationship to continue on as it has been going into this season, where you're really getting down to core values and core needs. And those core values are going to be the things that keep you warm and secure over the winter. So maybe you have some relationships that don't make you feel warm and secure. Venus is there saying like, there's potential to, the end result will be more peace and harmony. But with the Chiron over there, it means it might mean putting yourself first, might mean creating a little bit of inner discomfort. And of course, we have this Mars Mercury energy here of being a little bit more direct, speaking your truth a little bit more, stepping into that energy of, no, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I want. I know who I am. It could push some people away that previously, when you were keeping yourself a little bit more, polite and soft-spoken, a bit more of a wallflower, those people could stay in your life because you were never ruffling feathers. Okay. So expect relationships to be a theme as well during this full moon. And I think I'll leave it at that, because I always, I don't want to risk over confusing you with information, because again, this really is a time, especially because it's a fixed earth full moon. It really is a time to be like, okay, I got the download, I made my few notes, and now I'm going to disconnect, maybe go for a walk, let it all go, and see what lands, what is meant to stay, like the little golden breadcrumbs of wisdom. They'll always come back up when you need them or when they're relevant, even if it feels like you didn't take anything away or don't quite grasp it right away. So maybe disconnect, go for a walk, or sit in kind of a quiet, very still meditation, and see, just with the purpose of, yeah, like in the perfect world, in the perfect scenario where I felt completely safe and completely worthy. And then I look around at my life and I go, what is ready to shift here? Again, a really practical example on my end is I've been sleeping on a mattress on the floor. Like, I don't have a bed frame because I just moved and I want to get a king bed. I had a queen bed. I thought I might as well sell the bed frame, and haven't got the new bed yet. And just like, that's something that seems small and meaningless, right? But even the bed itself, I don't like. I've had it for a very long time. I keep wanting to get rid of it to get something new. But I put that off. That would mean receiving. That would mean putting energy and love into myself, resourcing myself, right? And I was just away at this silent meditation course. And after getting so clear, one of the core values I came out with was like, I want a freaking new bed, you know? And again, it might seem surface level, but it really isn't, because it's a deepening of my ability to resource myself, right? It's like I'm the beaver going into, say, like even 4 years ago, I was such an extreme minimalist that I challenged myself to have a buy nothing year. Like, literally, I would allow myself to buy like the basics, like a toothbrush or underwear, but I challenged myself to buy nothing, and I was proud of that. That's such Scorpio South Node of like, let's see how much I can like minimize and still kind of get through and survive, because there's a real like survival theme there, and that's my mastery. And so I was so deep in survival that I was completely not at all in that energy of receiving. Well, the abundance and the comfort level that you're able to afford yourself is directly reflective of your self-love. And so from 4 years ago to now, being able to say, okay, well, my car is going, I've been driving old cars for a very long time. Maybe I want to get into something that's a little bit newer and a little bit bougier and treat myself. And the bed, like, why am I still just okay with sleeping on a, mattress on the floor? Why not treat myself? That's representative of every year spiraling up in the self-awareness and doing the self-work with what I'm here to do on a soul level, right? Because my soul has done the survival and has the mastery in that, and is here now to see, okay, like, bring it in. Let's see how much I can receive. And again, by knowing myself, by knowing the patterns of the cosmos and knowing myself, that those two are like liquid gold, that then when you walk through your daily life and you are aware and awake to what is going on around you, and anytime something comes in that's big, that triggers, or that is like a whoa, then you go directly to these first two things. Okay, I know what's happening, so I know this is to be expected, and this is all part of the plan. My car is going during this season. Let it go. It's not meant to come forward with me. Gratitude to my car. Let's see how the universe wants to show me love with what wants to come in new. But first, I have to recognize the pattern, gracefully let go, which involves trust and surrender to this harmonious system we are working in. Remember, none of this works without trust in the law of nature, which is, it is a harmonious system. The sun always rises. The flower always blooms. The apple always ripens. There is harmony out there. It's just that pull that the moon helps us always see what is pulling you in the opposite direction of like death and decay and no rejuvenation. Okay, it's not truth, but it lives in our bodies, and that's what we're here to do. Transmute through our bodies and back into an organic, harmonious template. And the more of us that do that, the more the frequency on this planet will rise. And that's how we're doing this work individually every 2 weeks by following these moon cycles with your wisdom of the cosmic cycles, with your wisdom of who you are on the inside. Trust in the law of nature, that you are a part of nature and nature is harmonious and you're taken care of. That's the kind of the missing element here. And then wisdom, transmuting these two into wisdom that then you can then take into that situation that kind of gave you that little contraction. Breathe and go, no, I know who I am. I know, where I'm going, and I'm going to take a step in this direction, even though it's scary and I don't know what's going to happen. So may this Taurus full moon that is going to bring up the overabundance that you have that's ready to go, that's no longer aligned, or the lack of abundance when it comes to your ability to nurture and resource yourself. May it illuminate inside of you. May Scorpio season do its job to show you directly in your life what is not aligned. Remember, if something out there is breaking down, just like my car, or paining you every night when you sleep, it's not aligned anymore. It's Scorpio season. Let's let go with grace, and let's all hold hands here and trust that this is the season where we're going to just say, yeah, I'm going to trust this year. Breathe, and before we know it, we'll be in winter solstice. We'll be wintering together, slowing down, and coming back into new spring, next spring, as the new rejuvenated versions of ourselves. Okay. Love you all. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for the next new moon. Okay, if you're still watching, I hit the wrong button. So a second goodbye to you.